The Rock, when he was 3 years old, three, lived down the hallway from me in Nashville. And I saw him one time because he was like three. But that's where he lived with his father and his mother, which are his father's passed now, but his mother's still alive. And his name was Dewey, because I used to ride a lot with Rocky Johnson, and he'd talk about Dewey. And I never formally met him, but I would see him in the hallway sometimes. And he was always scampering around out there in the hallway, and I would open the door sometimes and see him. But good guy, really good guy. He came a long way. And did you know when he went to college or got out of college, I think he was broke. He had like $25 to his name. I think he wrote this in one of his books.
$7.
That's what he had, $7. And then he explains how he got out of being broke because he believed in himself and he went after it. So now here's another question about The Rock. I know we're supposed to answer questions here, but I think there's a big chance they may run him for president one day.
You think so?
Well, I think he'd entertain the thought. And I also think that he has a good chance of actually getting it, because everybody knows him and they don't know anything about him. He was a Republican, and I think now he's moved over to Democrat.
Now, that's not true. He was always bipartisan publicly until 2019, where he made mention that he was supporting the Democrats for some reason or another. He appeared at the Republican convention. But the thing is, he also appeared at the Democratic convention as well that same year. The problem is that the Republican one was far better covered, and they had a far better publicity campaign than the Democrats.
Well, the Republicans understand the beauty of the wrestling business. That's what I will say. Mm-hmm. The Democrats, on the other hand, I think they kind of look down on it as a downgrade from show business, almost like a carny sport. And we can say a lot of things about Vince McMahon, but Vince brought the wrestling business out of the National Guard armories. He brought them out of the high school gyms and brought them out of the car lot business. I mean, you used to have matches in car lots for a promotional, but he brought them out of all that and put them in stadiums. And even though he changed the language somewhat, he didn't want them called wrestlers. He wanted them called sports entertainers. Well, that's all fine and good. People could live with that. But he did a lot of things good for the business. But I'm saying the Democrats kind of looked down on it. And I don't know if they still do as a whole. But I think the Republicans embraced it. And I'm not saying which one I am, but I guess you can imagine what I am. But it doesn't matter. I'm an American. I have that right. I can be one or the other. Mm-hmm. Now, talking about libertarians, that's the other party they have. That's a Kane party. That's a Glenn Jacobs party. And I used to ride up and down the road. This is another story I'm into. I used to ride up and down the road with Glenn, and we would talk politics. But Glenn, even though he wasn't a Republican and he wasn't a Democrat, he would talk the libertarian line of view, which is less government, which has a lot of upside to it. Everything has a downside too. And he would explain this, and he made perfect sense with what he was trying to tell me. You know who else is a libertarian?
Cool.
Val Venus, a big one. But you get Val talking politics, you're stuck. He's going to hold you where you are, and he's going to get his point across. And he's a very engaging speaker. You'll like him, even though you may not agree with him, but you'll like him. So that's the only two libertarians I've known, but they are forcefully energetic in their defense of their political views, which I like about them.
One quote I heard from Jesse Ventura, which is still a very great quote, is "You can't legislate against stupidity." So creating pointless laws, very specific ones, like I think he was talking about something like a snowmobile or some accident.
But the thing about Jesse, and I met him in about 3 months ago up in New Jersey at another signing I did, but was he Republican or Democrat, or was he Libertarian?
He was independent when he ran for governor.
Absolutely. And I never talked politics with him, but he made a lot of sense in just the things I read about him. And a funny story about Jesse, wrestling made him famous. He was, of course, he was always a great talker coming up through wrestling. He came through Memphis a time or two, and I worked with him there. Not a lot. I probably worked with him. He was there 6 months or 8 months. Well, I'll probably work with him about 10 times, maybe. And he wasn't that great a worker, but he was an imposing presence with that voice. And he was a big guy. But the thing about him being on the ticket in Minnesota is when he ran for governor and who got him elected was wrestling fans. They came out of the woodwork in Minnesota to elect him, and it surprised the Democrats. It surprised the Republicans, and he got in there, and he actually did pretty well. You didn't hear of any scandals with him there, and I think he was a pretty good governor. I think he got into a big tiff with some special forces soldiers. Did you hear about that?
Oh, that's the Chris Kyle thing. In Chris Kyle's book, he says that he punched a notable ex-Marine / frogman, UDT frogman, in the face, but doesn't name him in the book. And then somehow it came out later he was writing about Jesse Ventura, and Jesse Ventura has said that it never happened. And Jesse won a lawsuit. While Chris Kyle was still alive, he was suing, and then Chris Kyle was killed by a friend of his. This is the guy who American Sniper. Was based off of.
But then he kept the suit going.
He did. He sued the widow, but actually I think the money was coming through the publishers or the publishers' insurance.
Well, but anyway, and I met Jesse Ventura 3 months ago. I saw him again, and he came right up to me, Dutch, shook my hand, hugged me, and I appreciated that because, Jesse's going to look like Jesse. You could see him coming a mile away. And I guess with this mustache, you could see me coming a mile away too. But I was very appreciative of him coming up and saying hello to me. And I'm sure if I'd have been at another part of the building, he probably wouldn't have tracked me down just expressly to see me. But very friendly, and I enjoyed seeing him again. And I thought my view on him, whether he's Democrat or Republican, I can still appreciate his views and not agree with him.